The neighboring game, I Raise Dragon Gods in the Interstellar, has already started. If you are interested, please feel free to poke it. Rebirth of the legitimate heavenly fairy girl versus death of the opponent demon lord through the book, the first prodigy in the cultivation world, Ning Xiang, has fallen. It is said that she fell into a demonic path before her death, losing all her rationality. In order to control the situation, her sect had to remove her sword bone and sink her into the never-ending ink pool. After Ning Xiang's death, her soul drifted in the air, watching as her sect, which she had been guarding with all her life, smeared her with the dirtiest words. She refused to even allow her to enter reincarnation, but instead her arch-nemesis, the demon lord, retrieved her body and even self-destructed the entire sect to bury her, feeling both sarcastic and surprised. Before losing consciousness completely, she thought that if there was an afterlife, she would no longer guard her sect, she just wanted to guard that stupid demon. Heavenly pity, Ning Xiang was reborn on the day she sealed Yinxing with half of her life. This time, everyone in the entire sect saw that the first sword cultivator, who was most jealous of demons, threw away his demon-slaying sword and was taken hostage by Yinxing in surprise, asking him to take her away. After arriving at the demon realm, Ning Xiang unexpectedly discovered that Yinxing had a very accurate understanding of her preferences, a soft big bed, beautiful pink clothes, green fruits that must be eaten in the middle of the night. She was surprised just like the little demon she had saved when she was young. Yinxing has two secrets. One is that his favorite paper figure has come true, and the other is that he lived with her for 3 years before becoming the demon lord. She was a star-like celestial beauty, and he never hoped to touch her, but one day, the stars unexpectedly ran towards him. Two-way redemption plus secret love comes true keywords of the novel. After rebirth, he indulges in the arms of his arch-nemesis, the demon lord, without any pop-ups. After rebirth, he indulges in the arms of his arch-nemesis, the demon lord, indulging in the latest chapters. If I say yes in chapter 1, do you trust me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. If I say yes in chapter 1, do you trust me? Pop. The loud slapping sound reached Ning Xiang's ears, gradually awakening her confused thoughts. In front of me was a huge tree blooming with large pink and white acacia flowers, and the pink veil tied to its branches was making a hunting sound as the evening wind blew. Under the giant tree sat a young girl lying paralyzed. Her face, hidden under the messy green silk, was 6 times similar to hers. However, at this moment, her right face was high and swollen, and the tears soaked in her face made her delicate and pitiful. This is not the first time Ning Xiang has seen her adopted sister put on such a posture. It's just a bit strange why Ning Ro looks much younger at this moment. She remembers that when she died, Ning Ro was already 20 years old, but now, how could she look like 17? Before she could figure it out, Ning Ro, who was sitting paralyzed under the tree, spoke with grievances. Second sister, I know you're unhappy that you're planning your birthday with me again this year. As an adopted daughter who later came to the Ning family, I shouldn't have enjoyed this kind of treatment either. I understand if you're taking action against me. After listening to Ning Ro's words, Ning Xiang glanced at the still-growing acacia tree and then lowered her head to look at the thing she was holding tightly in her right hand. Suddenly, she understood that perhaps she had been reborn 3 years ago after death. In a moment of shock, the young girl was surrounded by many disciples of Shaoyang Peak, and the voices of discussion began to rise one after another. Isn't this second senior sister? When did she come out of the 10 kills realm? It seems like something happened before the half-pillar incense, but it seems that second senior sister's heart is still as small as ever. It's not been a year or 2 since they started planning their birthdays together, has it? Why does she have to trouble little junior sister every year at this time? Look at little junior sister's right face, it's swollen and swollen. Humph, it's hard to guess. Second senior sister always has a cold face like an ice cube, and only knows how to bury her head in cultivation. Compared to her, our junior sister is not much pleased. Not long ago, we even gave many disciples of Shaoyang Peak a sword tassel each. In my opinion, she was jealous and had no place to vent before venting her anger on her junior sister. Ning Xiang didn't take these discussions to heart. Instead, she lowered her eyes and looked at Ning Ro, who was still pretending to be pitiful. She moved her cracked and bleeding lips and asked, "Ning Ro, are you sure I only started hitting you because I'm not satisfied with this matter?" The girl stood up in the wind, wearing a pure white disciple uniform stained with blood and dust. Even though she was in the midst of a discussion vortex, she was still unaffected. Instead, she looked at Ning Ro coldly like a lonely and wounded crane. There is a blue birthmark in the left eye of her Danfeng eye. At first glance, it can easily give people the illusion of being born with abnormal pupils, and the lighter the color of the eyes, the more obvious the expression in them. Ning Ro was shivered by the cold piercing in Ning Xiang's eyes, and continued to pretend to be foolish. What did second sister say? If it weren't for this, what else could it be? Me. Before Ning Ro could finish speaking, her moist eyes lit up for a moment because she saw something. The mist filled her eyes again and she said, "Senior brother, why did you come?" Ning Xiang followed the sound and saw the person wearing a disciple's uniform of the same color as her. They were tall and had heroic features, with a flesh mole growing in the center of their forehead. They looked like a Buddha who had fallen to the mortal world, with a transcendent temperament. The person who came was Xiaoyang Feng's senior brother and also Miao Yuxuan, who was her fiancé. After seeing him come, she didn't just care about her injured fiancé, but instead went to help Ning Ro, who was crying with pear blossoms and rain. Ning Xiang was not surprised, but calmly took out Yushang Wan from Na Jia and swallowed it, preparing to meet someone later. Miao Yuxuan wiped Ning Ro's tears and gave her a bottle of healing ointment. After that, he learned about the situation from Ning Ro and her disciples around him. His heroic face quickly showed signs of anger. He furrowed his brow and looked at Ning Xiang with disappointment in his eyes. "Ning Xiang, when did you actually become like this? In my memory, you were the most reasonable and disdainful person to bully the weak. But now, how could you be so willful and reckless that even the little junior sister, who has no cultivation, has been beaten hard?" Ning Xiang listened to the same questioning as in her previous life and put away the medicine bottle, saying coldly, "I agree with the slapping incident, but I didn't say anything else. But now that I've heard what you said, I only regret not being heavier when I tried earlier. It would be best to make her mouth swollen so she can't tell lies." After Ning Xiang finished speaking, she glanced coldly at Ning Ro, who was huddled behind Miao Yuxuan. She was so frightened that she immediately tightened her grip on Miao Yuxuan's sleeve, like a frightened little white rabbit. Miao Yuxuan noticed Ning Ro's fear of Ning Xiang and calmed her down before saying with a calm face, "Ning Xiang, you still have to continue to be unrepentant. If you apologize to the junior sister immediately now, this matter will be over. If not today, I will definitely seek justice for her." Justice. Ning Xiang looked at the young man in front of her who had indirectly caused her death in her past life. She didn't know if she was asking about this matter or something else, and sarcastically smiled, "How do you know that what you are about to do is to seek justice, not to favor and indulge evil? What do you mean by this?" Miao Yuxuan furrowed his brows a little deeper. "Is it possible that everyone present is lying, and you, Ning Xiang, are the only one who is innocent?" Ning Xiang looked straight into his eyes, her left eye with a blue birthmark tinged with some anticipation. "If I say yes, can you trust me?" The girl asked and opened her right hand, which she had been holding, revealing the sword-shaped jade pendant that had been broken into several pieces inside. "She sneaked into my cave to retrieve this item, and I asked her to return it to me. She said she wanted to return it, but deliberately let go and let it fall to the ground. Do you think she was unjustly slapped for this?" The onlookers were puzzled. "Isn't it just a jade pendant? As for slapping the little junior sister directly, second senior sister's mind is a bit too narrow. Yeah, And I don't believe that kind-hearted junior sister would intentionally do such a thing. Second senior sister, you also need evidence to splash dirty water on junior sister, right? Miao Yuxuan and Ning Xiang have known each other for the longest time. Others may not know the meaning of the jade pendant in her hand, but he is very clear about it. If that's why she started beating Ning Ro, it's truly understandable. But he lowered his head and glanced at the pitiful Ning Ro. When he looked up again, he avoided Ning Xiang's gaze and pursed his lips, saying, "I only believe what I hear and see." Ning Xiang sneered at herself upon seeing this, and the last glimmer of hope in her eyes dimmed as her sobriety gradually filled her abnormal pupils. "If that's the case, then I'll show you the evidence you want. I, Ning Xiang, have always been sitting upright. It's my fault, and I will admit it. No, even if it's forced by heaven, I won't admit it." After speaking, a stone attached to the cave was sucked into Ning Xiang's hand with cultivation. Open a new chapter. I really wanted to write about a male protagonist who is of the demon lord type. The text is not considered an orthodox upgrade trend, and the emotional line is greater than the plot line of Yazi. The name of the female protagonist Ning Xiang is based on Zheng Xixiao's painting chrysanthemums. I would rather die holding incense on a branch than fall into the north wind. I hope the new book can make everyone like it. Reader Group 186049278, red envelopes for activities or holidays will be added in the group. If you are interested, you can add them yourself. You can also chat with me and I will reply if I see them. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Our engagement, like this Jade. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Our engagement, like this Jade. The stone in the girl's hand is not unfamiliar to everyone. This stone is called the Shadow Stone, which can record sounds and images. It is usually a means for disciples in the cultivation world to protect their privacy. Even the disciples during the foundation period would prepare one outside the cave, let alone the famous first sword cultivator like Ning Xiang in the cultivation world. Ning Xiang infused his cultivation into it and soon saw a light and shadow projected from it, spreading out in the night sky, allowing everyone to see clearly. Ning Xiang couldn't help but laugh as she looked at Ning Ro's suddenly pale face and the panic in her eyes. She guessed that Ning Ro had never expected that someone like her, who despised arguing the most, would one day begin to resist, right? But at this moment, she didn't have much mood to continue appreciating Ning Ro's expression changes, but continued to regulate her internal injuries. At this point, the images in the Shadow Stone also began to accelerate playback, only filtering out images with people appearing and presenting them to everyone. In the video, Ning Ro, dressed in plain white disciple clothing, held a wooden box and was pleasantly surprised as she flew into the arms of another tall-looking male disciple. She kissed his right cheek and said, "Thank you for your birthday gift, I really like it." Although people in the realm of cultivation are not as particular as ordinary people, there is still a basic distance between male and female cultivators. Actions like kissing are usually done only when they reach the level of an unmarried couple. Ning Ro did this to this male disciple. Isn't that just an explanation? The thoughts of the disciples could not continue to diverge, and they were shocked by the male disciple who turned around and showed his face in the image. That person has a noticeable vermilion flesh mole on his forehead, with a handsome face. Who else could there be if it weren't Miao Yuxuan? Isn't this the senior brother? How could he be so intimate with the junior sister? Hey, stop talking, didn't you see that senior brother's face is already very ugly? Ning Xiang was also a bit surprised to see this scene again, but after thinking about the same thing that happened in her previous life on this day, she suddenly understood something. At this moment, the image displayed on the image stone changed, and after the thick white mist dissipated, Ning Xiang and Ning Ro appeared standing under the acacia tree, competing for something. Ning Ro, return the jade pendant to me. This is a relic left by my mother. You can ask me for any birthday gift, but this one won't do. Ning Xiang only went through brutal training from the 10 kills realm and brought back injuries all over her body. Although her words had an oppressive tone, upon closer inspection, there was still some difficulty hidden. But Ning Ro, as Ning Xiang's foster sister, did not first pay attention to her injuries. Instead, she held the things in her hand tighter and avoided Ning Xiang's outstretched hand. "No, I'm just interested in this jade pendant. Second sister, you don't usually stay in the cave. It's a pity to put such a good thing in the cave and dust it off. If you give it to me, I will definitely wear it day by day and help you take care of it." Ning Xiang raised her voice. "I'll say it again, give me the thing. If it weren't for my fear of accidentally damaging it in the 10 kills realm, how could I stay in the cave and give you a chance to get it? You can just trespass on my cave and steal some things, but this thing is not as good as those things, you must return it to me." "Second sister, why are you so stingy?" "It's just that, then I'll give it back to you." Ning Ro saw that Ning Xiang seemed to be angry and could only hand over the things. But before Ning Xiang reached out to take it, she deliberately let go and let the jade pendant in her hand fall to the ground. Later, there was a scene where Ning Xiang, in a fit of anger, slapped Ning Ro and crouched down to pick up the shattered jade pendant after she fell to the ground. Seeing this, it was already very clear what was right and what was wrong, and the focus of the disciples' discussion quickly shifted to Ning Ro. Surprisingly, it was the little junior sister who let go early. Why did she do this? Second senior sister said it was a relic left by her mother, why should she go so far? As I said before, Ning Ro is very good at pretending. If you don't believe her, it's okay to cry. Where did you get that face? I think the key is that she went into second senior sister's cave without permission to steal things. According to second senior sister, this is not the first time she has done this. One time, it can be said that she is not sensible. What about multiple times? Ning Ro's eyes were filled with some disdain and disgust as her disciples around her looked at her, and she felt extremely anxious. At this moment, Yinxing Ning Xiang still needs to ask her again. How about it? Do you still insist on the previous statement after reading this? Ning Ro could only shrink her head very low and her eyes turned red again. I still pitied her and said, I'm sorry, second sister. I really didn't know that you would hit me because of this. I accidentally didn't hold the jade pendant steady. Ning Xiang grew tired of this trick in her previous life and continued to ask her, do you think I should just slap you? At this point, if Ning Ro wanted to say, yes, she would hit herself in the face and could only bite her lip without answering. Miao Yuxuan saw that Ning Ro had been forced to turn red. With a look of heartache in his eyes, he spoke up for her and said, Ning Xiang, don't be so aggressive. Maybe the junior sister didn't mean it, she. Miao Yuxuan. Ning Xiang interrupted him, don't worry about speaking for her. I haven't asked you about the image in the photo stone just now. Should you give me an explanation for my fiancé AE? Upon hearing this, Miao Yuxuan silently replied in a muffled voice. There's nothing to explain. My junior sister and I are innocent. She was just too happy on her birthday today and lost her composure in a moment of excitement. How could you be so petty? My little belly and chicken intestines. Ning Xiang smiled and pulled out an emerald green jade pendant tied to a red rope from her collar. Miao Yuxuan recognized it, which was the engagement jade pendant given to her by his family when they proposed to her back then. Since that's the case, you can find a fiancé AE who can be so happy that her head will turn green at any time. My fiancé AE, Ning Xiang, cannot be like you, and cannot maintain a distance with other women like you. After speaking, Ning Xiang threw the jade pendant in her hand into the air, pulled out the demon-slaying sword from behind, and swung it straight. As the wind of the Lingling sword blew and everyone's clothes fluttered, her cold voice echoed along with the sound of jade fragments. Today, our engagement is like this jade. If the jade shatters, our engagement will be abandoned. I wish you all the best in finding a good person soon, and we will never doubt our love. Miao Yuxuan was shocked and looked at the shattered jade that had fallen to the ground. At that moment, he suddenly felt something extremely important slip away from his hand, with a rare expression on his face. Ning Xiang sheathed her sword and looked coldly at Miao Yuxuan, feeling that the accumulated malice in her past life had always been a source of relief in this life. Just as the disciples were shocked and saddened by this incident, a disciple of Shaoyang Peak came with a sword, bringing them even more shocking news. It's not good, senior brother. The demon has somehow broken into the cultivation world and is harming our sect's disciples at the mountain gate. Woohoo, countdown to male lead's appearance, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. She abandoned the demon sword in her hand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. She abandoned the demon sword in her hand in front of Shaoyang Fengshan Gate. One after another screams broke the night, and followed the rich bloody smell in the air to Ning Xiang. She looked through the dim sky to see the location where the most disciples gathered inside the peak, and caught a glimpse of a familiar powder before rushing straight with her sword. At the center of the crowd stood a young man in a light pink dress, wearing a woodcut half-face mask. The man has fair skin, and the lips and beads that are exposed are very obvious. Looking up, the only thing that can be seen from his half-face mask again is those beautiful peach blossom eyes. But at this moment, Ning Xiang couldn't see any light in his eyes, only a terrifying emptiness. Seeing this, she was almost certain that he had been poisoned by nightmares, just like in his previous life. The nightmare poison can make the poisoned person believe that the person they care about the most has died, and under such a huge blow, they are most easily controlled by the toxin, thus becoming completely irrational. In her past life, she still had serious injuries brought back from the 10 kills realm, her strength greatly reduced, and she was completely defeated by Yinxing. She didn't know that he was poisoned, and she didn't know if she could use the method of detoxifying him to avoid this battle. She could only use the demon-slaying sword to seriously injure him and use half of her own life as a substitute to seal him into the demon bell. This time, she will make every effort to avoid repeating her old ways, even if it comes at the cost of paying for her life. At this moment, Miao Yuxuan also arrived at the place. He asked her to take out the Ningtian and the magic sealing bell left for her, as she had in her past life memories. Once the sealing magic clock is taken out, even if it's not her, Miao Yuxuan could have successfully activated it with half his life. So she could only lie without hesitation, saying that the sealing magic bell had been left in the cave of the 10 kills realm by her. Upon hearing this, Miao Yuxuan frowned and looked at Yinxing, who was still losing his sanity and continuing to hurt others. As Qingxi was shaken by the demonic aura, she urgently asked her, "What should I do? Without the sealing magic bell, you still have serious injuries on your body and cannot exert your normal strength. How can you defeat him? If one person can't beat it, chariot will battles are always possible. I'll go first, and you can go back later when I've exhausted some of his stamina." After Ning Xiang finished speaking, she pulled out the demon-slaying sword from the scabbard and rushed into the crowd, running towards Yinxing's location. Her sword pointed directly at his throat, full of killing intent. The stronger murderous aura made Yinxing shift his gaze to Ning Xiang. Under his control of a wooden expression, the peach blossom folding fan in his hand swung fiercely towards her, throwing a powerful and overwhelming fan. As Ning Xiang continued to charge towards him, she anxiously reminded him through a voice in her mind, "Yinxing, I am Ning Xiang. What are you going crazy about?" A certain word in her sentence seemed to have worked, and the young man who had originally intended to throw a second fan at her suddenly stopped his hand movements. His eyebrows furrowed slightly, and a burst of pain filled his heart. Seeing this, Ning Xiang continued to work harder, holding the demon sword of execution and getting closer to him. He continued, "I didn't tell you before that I only fight the fights I agreed on in advance. What are you doing today?" Ning Xiang lifted her heart tightly and looked into Yinxing's peach blossom eyes, afraid of seeing the numb emptiness in his eyes again. Fortunately, a word she frequently mentioned finally worked. She clearly saw the radiance gradually spreading over the young man's peach blossom eyes. When he saw her still alive, his eyes burst into a huge light, and even his eyes turned slightly red. Ning Xiang suppressed the strange tingling sensation in her heart that had been scorched by his gaze, remembering the plan she had already planned in her mind before coming, and using her repaired cultivation to self-harm and activate the poison brought back from the 10 kills realm in her body. In just a few breaths, she saw a large expanse of black and purple crawling all over her body, causing maximum dizziness in her mind, and her lips turning visibly pale to the naked eye. The next moment, everyone in the entire sect saw that the first sword, Ning Xiang, who was most jealous of demons, had thrown away the demon-slaying sword in front of demons for the first time. It fell into Yinxing's arms like a winged white crane, and in his surprised expression, he fainted. At this moment, just as the seal of the demon god had been firmly sealed, Lord Ningfeng, who had received a message that tore through the void twice in a row, also rushed back. He was shocked and looked at Ning Xiang, who had been taken hostage by Yinxing, and roared angrily, "Demon, let go of my son quickly." Before Yinxing injured those disciples, it had already consumed a lot of his magic. This would make him have no chance of winning against Ning Tianhe in the later stage of transforming the god, unless he borrowed power from the demon god to burn his lifespan. But his life still had to be preserved to protect Ning Xiang, so he could only dig out his ear in a very lifeless manner after looking at the girl in his arms with a complicated expression, mocking. "Ning Lao never dies, what are you farting about? Although it's already dark, don't dream here with me. I let her go. Did I let her go so that I could be surrounded by you hypocritical righteous people? TSK, I didn't expect you to be ugly, but you're quite beautiful." Ning Tianhe became famous at a young age, and now at only 50 years old, he has reached the position of peak leader that ordinary cultivators can only reach at the age of 60 or 70. He also has a daughter like Ning Xiang who is so proud. Apart from his young wife's loss, it can be considered one of his shortcomings, and another is his face, which is like a shoe pulled out. After listening to Yinxing's foul-mouthed speech, his face immediately twisted and turned black, and his mouth was almost crooked with anger. But Yinxing was as angry as not realizing his anger, adding fuel to the fire and making a disdainful gesture of squinting his eyes and not opening his head, as if he had been visually contaminated. Then he picked up Ning Xiang and lazily said in his voice, "Get out of the way, otherwise I won't guarantee what I will do to your daughter." As soon as Yin's jargon fell, a crisp female voice burst into everyone's ears. "I'm willing to go with you as a hostage after releasing my second sister." Ning Rose somehow darted into the center of the crowd, biting her lips and approaching Yinxing. Her small face, which still had palm prints and tears, was full of determination. "Rower, you're confused. Come back quickly." Ning Tianhe's reaction when he saw that Ning Ro was going to be a hostage was obviously much stronger. Yinxing saw this and sneered for Ning Xiang, saying, "What are you? Who gave you the confidence to be on par with Ning Tianjiao? You deserve it too." No opposite sex would ever embarrass Ning Ro, except for Yinxing. He didn't see Ning Ro's eyes turning red, and slowly lifted his steps under the siege of the disciples of Shaoyang Peak, leisurely walking towards the mountain gate like walking in his own backyard. Unfortunately, Ning Tianhe remained silent, and none of the disciples dared to stop him. They could only watch Yinxing leave with a swagger, holding Ning Xiang in his arms. After no longer seeing his figure, Miao Yushuan worried and looked at Ning Tianhe, asking, "Master, what should we do now?" Ning Tianhe gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "We can only contact Xiaoxiang after she wakes up. She was only taught the poison she was poisoned by before we looked at it. The antidote is only available in the demon world, so the relationship between this demon and her should not be ignored." Ning Tianhe. Are you polite? The name of the male protagonist Yinxing is based on Su Shi's Ding Feng Bo. Don't listen to the sound of rustling leaves through the forest, why not chant and walk slowly? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Yinxing. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4 Yinxing in the Demon World. The morning light outside the window was faint, but the darkness surrounding the young girl inside the room did not fade away. She fell into a deep nightmare, with a cold sweat soaking her forehead and her head curtain. Xiaoyang Feng's traitor Ning Xiang, who willingly fell into the devil's way, has now killed several of her fellow disciples, and even ruthlessly attacked her foster sister with a snake and scorpion heart, causing her to remain unconscious until now. It is truly countless and extremely vicious. Today, as her biological father and also the leader of Shaoyang Peak, Ning Xiang, deposed her dantian, stripped her sword bones, and sank her into the never-ending ink pool in order to give you and your deceased disciples an explanation. Do you have any objections? Ning Xiang walked up to the young girl leaning on the demon sword in her right hand and kneeling on the ground, as if asking the cultivators in the surrounding peaks. The pure white disciple robe worn by the girl has been dyed deep red with blood, and her body is covered with hundreds of scars of various sizes. A messy green silk was blown away by the cold wind, revealing her face that had already turned pale and cold. Her chest was not heaving, and her entire body weight was supported by the demon-slaying sword in her hand, indicating that she had been out of breath for a long time. But it seemed that no one noticed this, all filled with righteous indignation, cursing and shouting, "Scum," and "Shame," below. Some even threw stones and branches at her, as if she had really done something heinous. Ning Xiang saw no objection from the crowd and started digging out the bones of Ning Xiang's sword. He kicked her, who had lost her bone support and had turned into a ball of rotten meat, into EP1-10, as if it was not his own daughter who had just been kicked down by him, but just a dead dog. But just as the young girl's body had just sunk into the pool, the overwhelming demonic aura suddenly enveloped the entire Shaoyang Peak, and a very prominent pale pink figure appeared with a stream of light, heading straight towards the ink pool. When this figure rushed out of the ink pool again, something had already been added to his arms. That was a young man wearing a woodcut mask and a light pink shirt. His exposed passionate peach blossom eyes had become bloodshot and terrifying, and his body was filled with sharp and murderous aura. How dare you! Men are like wild beasts that have lost their partners, emitting heart-wrenching low growls of questioning. A constant stream of magic slowly enveloped him with his low roar, causing his beautiful black hair to instantly turn white. The exposed flesh was also covered in large cracks, as if it would shatter like falling ceramics in the next moment. Someone noticed his intention and shouted in terror, "No good, Yinxing, this demon wants to self-destruct. Stop him." Soul-shaped Ning Xiang drifted beside her corpse, watching as her sect, who had sacrificed her life to defend her, smeared her with the dirtiest words, even refusing to allow her to enter reincarnation. Instead, her arch-nemesis, the demon lord, who had been sealed with half of her life, retrieved her body and now had to self-destruct to avenge her, feeling only sarcastic and surprised. She stared blankly at the foolish demon in front of her, whose hair had turned white for her. Her heart was filled with inexplicable pain, and she asked in a hoarse voice, "Why?" But Yinxing was destined not to hear what she said, and just stared at the girl in her arms who seemed to be asleep, whispering softly, "Ning Xiang, I'm so regretful." Unfortunately, what? Ning Xiang's ears became buzzing under the cover of a larger range of magic, and she couldn't hear clearly. He could only watch as more cracks crawled all over his body, shedding tears and shaking his head, saying, "You don't want to. You don't want it." Ning Xiang shouted out and suddenly woke up from the bed, sitting up and panting heavily. Tears soaked her entire face, and the cold sweat on her forehead continued to slide down with the violent fluctuations in her chest, making her head curtain even wetter. She sat on the couch for a long time, calming down until her slightly painful heart improved a lot, and then looked up at her surroundings. The room was filled with various furniture with peach blossom carvings and some strange things, and she was sitting on a soft bed with a pink bed curtain. Her clothes had been stripped down to only the inner garment. A continuous stream of strong peach blossom fragrance penetrated her nose, giving her the illusion of being in the peach forest. In just a moment, she guessed where she had gone. The figure that appeared in her line of sight next also confirmed what she was thinking. "Oh, wake up." Yinxing entered the bedroom wearing morning dew and walked slowly towards Ning Xiang, shaking a peach blossom folding fan. As he approached, a stronger peach blossom aroma emanated from around his body. Ning Xiang's gaze was fixed on his dark green hair, and she inexplicably called out to him before and after him stopped at her, Yinxing. Yinxing looked up at her at the sound, but was surprised to find that her eyes were not as cold and unhappy as he used to see. Instead, they were filled with an indescribable emotion. Upon seeing this, he looked strange for a moment before continuing to wait for her next message. But to his surprise, the girl in front of him didn't speak anymore. Instead, she reached out to him with a dazed expression, wanting to touch his face wearing a woodcut half-face mask. Yinxing had never done such a move before, and for a moment he was stunned. His peach blossom eyes, hidden under his mask, stared at her with confusion. But just as her right hand was about to touch his face, which had cracked into dust in her past life, Ning Xiang took another breath and carefully stopped her hand. Her eyes were filled with small hopes and great fear, as if something she couldn't bear would happen 1 inch further forward. Yinxing furrowed his brow a little deeper when he saw her like this. He leaned his face closer and gently pressed it against her fingertips, curious to continue staring at her, wanting to see what she was really up to. To his great shock, he then caught a glimpse of crimson staining the corners of her strange pupils, with crystal-clear tears converging into beads at a terrifying speed, falling from her eyes one after another with broken wires. The girl Yinxing called out his full name for the second time today, but the feeling it gave Yinxing was completely different from the first time. However, he couldn't think of what was different at the moment and didn't have the mood to think about it. He looked at the girl who had shed tears in front of him for the first time, feeling helpless and said, "Ning Xiang, why are you suddenly crying so well?" However, his words made Ning Xiang's tears surge even more. She leaned forward, plunged into his arms under his shocked gaze, and reached out to hold him tightly. "I dreamt that you stupid demon died. You died so miserably, but it shouldn't have been like this." When Yinxing heard her first sentence, his face had already turned black. He thought to himself that she despised him so much, even in his dreams, he wished he would die. However, after hearing her last sentence, the anger and grievance in his eyes quickly dissipated and turned into a strong surprise. He started pushing her. "What do you mean? Sit up and explain clearly. A certain demon lord. Oh no, my arch-nemesis is so strange, but I love it so much." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. I will not draw the demon-slaying sword against you again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. I will not draw the demon-slaying sword against you again. Ning Xiang noticed that Yinxing was pushing her, but she refused to let go at all. It seemed that as soon as she let go, the person in front of her would turn into dust like in a previous life, and she became very anxious about gains and losses. She just stingily distanced herself from him, with a distance that was almost touching his nose. Her moist eyes met his peach blossom eyes and she said seriously, "What I mean is, I don't want to see you die, I want to see you live for a long time. Can you understand what I'm saying?" Yinxing stared at her for a while, and finally nodded with the same serious expression, "I understand." Ning Xiang breathed a sigh of relief, but he continued, "You must have been mentally damaged by the soul-burning poison in your body. Stay still and don't move around. I'll go call the demon doctor over. Your current behavior is really frightening." Yinxing remembers clearly that on weekdays, Ning Xiang saw that his nose was not his nose, and his eyes were not his eyes. Even if he accidentally touched the corner of his clothes during sparring, he would directly cut it off with a sword, as if he had encountered some plague. How could it be like this, sticking to him like a piece of candy without saying anything, and still saying some nonsense hoping he'll live a long time? Ning Xiang. She sighed and saw that Yinxing was about to start pushing her again. She guessed that it might be because she had changed too much compared to before, which he couldn't accept for a moment. She could only reluctantly let go and distance herself from him, wiping the moist corners of her eyes. I don't need to go see a magic doctor. I'm very clear-headed now, I just had a real too abnormal dream and figured out many things. After speaking, she shifted the topic and asked him, what happened to her after she fell unconscious yesterday, and how could she appear here? Yinxing still had a lot of doubts and wanted to ask, but looking at Ning Xiang's expression of not wanting to say much, he could only suppress his confusion and took out the black and blue sword from the ring, handing it to her. Here, your demon-slaying sword. Yesterday, after you fell into a coma, Ning Xiang returned. At that time, I had an injury in my body and could only use you as a hostage to leave. I originally wanted to leave you a little further away, but I found out that you had been poisoned by the soul-burning poison, which only has an antidote in the demon world, and brought you over. This was similar to what Ning Xiang had anticipated. She reached out to take the demon-slaying sword and uttered a sentence that made Yinxing's heart tremble. Yinxing, I won't draw the demon-slaying sword against you again in the future. When she said these words, the girl's expression was serious, and the emotion that he couldn't understand reappeared in Yinxing's strange pupils, disturbing his heart. But soon, as if he had thought of something, he mocked himself and suppressed that very absurd idea, squinting his eyes and asking her, what do you mean? Ning Xiang, have you forgotten that there hasn't been a winner between us yet? After meeting 3 years ago, the two of them became rivals due to their equally outstanding strength and talent. Although there have been over 100 fights of all sizes over the years, no victory or defeat has emerged between them. Of course, Ning Xiang remembered this. She shook her head and said, I didn't forget. I just said that I won't use the demon-slaying sword when I fight with you again in the future. When I return to Shaoyang Peak, I plan to find a new sword, and then I will use that sword to fight against you. Yinxing was puzzled and said, why? Have you been using the demon-slaying sword quite smoothly these years? Ning Xiang said, it used to be quite convenient, but now it's not. The demon sword punishes evil spirits from all over the world, and those who should be killed. As a sword wielder, she must acknowledge this in order to maximize her strength. However, she can no longer do it. And more importantly, piercing the demon's body with the demon-slaying sword would cause intense pain like corroding flesh and blood. She remembered that Yinxing was very afraid of pain, and every time he fought with her, he would sweat a layer of cold sweat on his forehead. But how could she be willing to let such a person who is very afraid of pain die without a place to bury herself in the most painful form of self-destruction in her past life? Yinxing wanted to ask why again, but saw a faint white light shining from the transmitting stone around her waist. It was not difficult to guess that Shaoyang Feng had transmitted the message to her. He, who had always known the importance of Shaoyang Feng in Ning Xiang's eyes, was too lazy to bother himself, so he could only swallow the words back into his stomach, calculate to lift his step and leave, temporarily avoiding it. But before he could take 2 steps, she grabbed his sleeve and wrist, forcing him to stop. Ning Xiang looked at him nervously, with a clear reflection of his slightly stunned face reflected in her pupils. She asked him, Yinxing, where are you going? The girl held it tightly, and even men like Yinxing could feel slight pain. But now it is not pain that occupies his main thoughts, but the physical contact she has with him again. The previous few encounters were a bit too flattering for him, to the point where he was only shocked at the time and didn't feel anything. Now that he has asked more clearly, she still treats him like this. He quickly heats up his ears and wants to retract his hand. Ning Xiang, who are you arguing with? Let go. I'm just avoiding it for a while. Isn't Shaoyang Feng delivering the message to you? Why, are you still making me listen to what you're saying? You. I will. Ning Xiang interrupted him, holding his hand but still not retracting it. In front of him, she connected the communication stone with a shocked expression, proving it to him. As soon as Chuanin Shifu connected, he heard Ning Tianhe's anxious and concerned voice coming out of it. Xiao Xiang, how do you feel? Has the demon detoxified you? Upon hearing this familiar voice, Ning Xiang's eyes flashed with sarcasm and coldness, but she quickly suppressed her and said in her usual cold voice, Father, I'm fine. The soul-burning poison in my body has not been completely released yet, and I may need to stay here for a while longer. Not completely solved yet. How could it be, the demon world is not? Ning Xiang seemed to guess what Ning Tianhe was going to say, and interrupted him with Mo Yinxing's guilty look. The reason why my daughter thinks so is mainly to avenge Xiao Yangfeng's colleagues who suffered from the disaster, not just to detoxify. Yesterday, the disciples of Xiaoyang Peak were indeed seriously injured, and Ning Xiang's usual temperament may have given rise to this idea. Ning Tianhe didn't say much, but only reminded her to take good care of herself during her time in the demon world. Finally, as if he had remembered something, he added, after you come back, let's talk about the matter between you and Yuxuan. Xiao Xiang, you are a sister. Why do you always argue with Xiaoro, who is a younger sister? Father listens to what happened that day. Father. Ning Xiang interrupted him in a cold voice, her eyes filled with impatience. Mo Yinxing seems to be coming, we'll contact you later. After she neatly cut off the transmission stone, Mo Yinxing closed his eyes and curiously asked her, Ning Tianjiao, in the dream you mentioned, shouldn't I have saved your life? Otherwise, how could she be like a different person, not only willing to actively touch him, but also unabashedly contacting people in the cultivation world in front of him? Ning Xiang, a newly born and insecure little crane. Off topic. Next door, I Raise Dragon Gods in the Interstellar has already started. If you're interested, go and see it. While posting a brief introduction. Wearing a book Mad Princess vs. Shy and Inferior Dragon God, Interstellar, Xiao Mei had seen a miracle when she was young. The unattainable dragon god extended a helping hand to her in the towering waves, rescuing her from danger. She remembered clearly that he had beautiful black scales and a sea of stars in his golden pupils, which made her unforgettable at a glance. Once again, she successfully penetrated into his beloved interstellar text and became the cannon fodder princess who failed to awaken her family and was about to be exiled to the garbage star GG. But the once beautiful dragon god has now become scarred, foul-smelling, lying in the wholly abandoned beast row without anyone's attention. On the day of the retesting of the holy beast's family, Xiao Mei crossed over all the holy beasts and firmly walked towards the dragon god who had fallen dust, stopping in front of him. She blushed and hid her eyes in a terrifying and infatuated manner, approaching with an absolutely aggressive posture. She handed him the accessory stone in her hand, her gaze devout. Dragon god, are you willing to choose me? For millions of years, the revered dragon god has entered an era where no one believes in it. Without willpower and sacrifice, he became extremely weak and on the brink of death. Another year is the awakening day of the Holy Beast clan. He lay in the corner without any expectations, waiting for the agony to end, but unexpectedly heard a footstep stop in front of the awakening domain. He thought it would get further and further away from him like it has done millions of times before, but this time, it came to a precise stop in front of him with a massive willpower that shocked him. Believers chasing gods plus emotional female strength and male weakness plus interstellar beast mecha superpower, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. I Believe in. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. I Believe in. Ning Xiang looked up into Mo Yinxing's curious blood-colored peach blossom eyes and shook her head. No, it's not. No. Then why are you just like a different person? Mo Yinxing frowned and looked at Ning Xiang's jade hand, which was still holding onto his arm and sleeves, with a clear meaning. Ning Xiang also knew that in the past, she was extremely disgusted by touching Mo Yinxing, so she could only let go with some regret and told him the truth. Although it didn't save my life, it was similar. In your dream, you chose to self-destruct to avenge me, and there was no place to bury yourself. When she said these words, Ning Xiang's tone was extremely light, as if it was just a dream that had not happened before. However, when she looked up at Mo Yinxing again, the deep concern in her eyes still betrayed her. After listening to Ning Xiang's explanation, Mo Yinxing's first reaction was not to sneer. How could he have done this for her? Instead, he furrowed his brows a bit deeper and asked her, "How did you die? Where was my true self when you died? Why did I only appear after you died?" Ning Xiang didn't speak, but continued to stare at his peach blossom eyes hidden under the half-face woodcut mask. The concern in the eyes of the young man was not concealed, just like hundreds or even thousands of times in her past memories. Once it involved her life and safety, he seemed to have changed a person and didn't have the attitude he should have towards a mortal enemy. But in her past life, due to her extreme disgust towards demons, she never cared about it, nor did she think about the reasons in the past. Now that she once again caught a glimpse of the familiar care in his eyes, she suddenly wanted to know. The girl shook her head and used the excuse of not being able to remember clearly as an excuse to avoid it. She then turned to whether she was asking him or stating a fact and said, "Mo Yinxing, I suddenly realized that every time you mention something related to my life, you always show extra concern." Mo Yinxing didn't expect her to suddenly say such words. After a moment of confusion, he avoided her gaze and stared. "Are you talking nonsense? You are the only one in the entire 3 realms who deserves to be my opponent. If you die, who will I go to compete with in the future?" Ning Xiang's cultivation was in the early stage of yuanying, similar to the early stage of xuanmo. Mo Yinxing, who did not rely on the power of the demon god to improve her cultivation level, had similar strength. In the entire 3 realms, her cultivation was just right on par with him. His answer sounded impeccable. Seeing her drooping her eyes and not speaking again, Mo Yinxing lowered his panic and cleared his throat, talking about what she had previously told Ning Xiang to stay in the demon world for a period of time. "The incident of hurting your fellow disciples in the cultivation world yesterday was not my original intention. I was poisoned by someone's nightmares, which led to my complete loss of reason and intrusion. You." Speaking of which, Mo Yinxing seemed to have remembered something and sneered at himself, "Forget it, why are you talking nonsense to me? Anyway, you won't believe what I'm saying." Looking at his lost expression, Ning Xiang suddenly remembered that every time the demon world did something that harmed the interests of the cultivation world in the past, Mo Yinxing had explained it in the same way, saying that he did not initiate the incident and made her believe him. But how did she do it? She never believes his words and even makes sarcastic remarks towards him, and her attitude towards him is always extremely sharp and harsh. "I believe it," she interrupted Mo Yinxing softly as he was about to say something more. She looked up at him and said, "In the future, as long as it's what you say, I will believe it." Mo Yinxing looked at Ning Xiang's serious and persistent face, and her somewhat ambiguous words echoed in her ear. Her heart slowed down and she blushed for the first time today. He stopped staring and muttered, "That dream you had was quite impressive, just like turning you into a person." After muttering, he took out a pink peach blossom embroidered dress from within the Lord of the Rings and continued, "If you believe me, it's easy to say. The person who poisoned me should be from the demon realm. If you stay in the demon realm, you can't wear the clothes of the cultivation realm anymore." Ning Xiang picked up the women's pink dress and looked at the embroidered peach blossoms on it, as well as the fine gemstones and clear moon gauze sewn on the hem and cuffs. Her heart was instantly pierced, but she didn't change into it immediately. Instead, she instinctively remembered some unpleasant memories. "Father, I also want to wear this pink dress like my younger sister." "Xiao Xiang, as the hope for the future of the cultivation world, you should focus all your thoughts on improving your cultivation. What's so important about these external things? As a father in the future, I don't want to hear you say such things again." Mo Yinxing saw her holding the clothes for a long time without changing them, thinking it was because she didn't like them. He pinched the finger with many pinholes and asked her, "But didn't he like it?" Ning Xiang regained her senses and smiled lightly, shaking her head. No, I really like it. As if to prove what she said, she waved her sleeve and changed her clothes. The girl originally had apricot cheeks and peach cheeks, giving birth to a beautiful appearance. However, she was accustomed to wearing a stable white outfit on weekdays, and her face often kept cold. In Yinxing's words, she was just a hard ice block. Wearing this pink dress that accentuates her delicate figure, the once cold and charming Danfeng's eyes add a touch of radiance, revealing the allure and cuteness that a girl of this age should possess. After watching this scene, Yinxing's expression froze for a moment, and his heart rate in his chest unconsciously increased a lot. This was Ning Xiang's first time wearing a pink dress. While feeling excited, she also felt a bit nervous. She looked at the young man who was still staring at her in a daze and asked him, would this not fit me well? Yinxing was awakened by the girl's questioning voice and cleared his throat, stuttering, cough still. It's okay, isn't it? It's not just okay, it's not an exaggeration to say that a goddess descended to earth. But he naturally wouldn't say these words in front of her. After watching the girl who had changed her appearance for a while, he seemed to remember something. He then took out a bracelet embedded with red gemstones from his sleeve and handed it to her. You are a cultivator, and if you use any cultivation level in the cultivation world, you will be discovered by the demon at the first time. This item is called the Borrowing Power Bracelet, and when you wear it, you can directly use your own power as a cover for you. Ning Xiang reached out to take it, put it on, and tried it on. Sure enough, when she exerted her strength again, it had become a magic that she couldn't be more familiar with. Seeing that there were no more issues with her, Yinxing suggested taking her out to familiarize herself with the environment of the demon world and giving her a new identity. His personal maid. There has never been a woman in my demon palace before. Suddenly accepting you as a close maid will definitely attract some people's attention. Remember to speak less when you go out with me later, and I will help you deal with it. Upon hearing this, Ning Xiang furrowed her brows and, as she followed him outside, expressed her doubts with sincerity. Don't you have a woman from the backyard? How could there never be a woman in the demon palace? The cultivation levels in the private cultivation realm, from low to high, are Qi cultivation, foundation building, golden elixir, yuanying, shenhua, and crossing the tribulation, ascension. The cultivation levels of the private demon realm, from low to high, are human demon, earth demon, heavenly demon, mysterious demon, true demon, and Yinxia. Waiting for them is death. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Even Mosquitoes Without Mother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Even Mosquitoes Without Mother, a Backyard. Yinxing looked dumbfounded as he looked into Ning Xiang's skeptical eyes. Who told you that? There's no mother mosquito in my demon palace. Where did a woman from a backyard come from? To be honest, Ning Xiang said, in the cultivation world, it is said that you are not only cruel and ruthless, but also very fond of lust. There are hundreds of women who have been taken into the backyard by you. Yinxing gritted his teeth in silence and said, so you believe. Ning Xiang didn't dare to say that she had believed before, and it was precisely because of this that her reaction was so strong every time he touched her sleeve or something, because she felt that he was so dirty that anyone could touch him. After gathering these thoughts, Ning Xiang shook her head calmly and said, it's just clarifying a rumor I heard. But for some reason, when she heard him say that he didn't even have a mother mosquito here, she felt a strange sense of pleasure in her heart. After listening to what she said, Yinxing felt a little more comfortable and his face softened a bit. Let's go, let's familiarize ourselves with the demon world. The environment in the demon world is different from what Ning Xiang had thought before. It's not the kind of situation where there is only night and no day, and there is still a lot of dark and demonic aura floating around. Instead, there are large peach blossom forests planted around. When the wind blows, many peach petals come with a strong peach blossom fragrance. The perfect sunlight shone through the crevices of the branches and struck Yinxing, coating his body with a layer of fuzzy golden border. Even if his facial features were not clearly visible, it still gave people a pleasing beauty. At this moment, Ning Xiang looked at him, unable to tell that he was a demon, but instead felt like an ordinary male cultivator who had accidentally entered the demon world. Yinxing didn't know that Ning Xiang was secretly watching him, so he took her to the edge of a lake with a faint blue light and introduced her. This is the Forgotten River, filled with the souls of the deceased demons. Even demons like us who enter it will lose half of our lives, not to mention those like you. At this point, Yinxing temporarily remained silent and switched to the form of transmission, cautiously continuing, "Don't talk about cultivators like you who come from the cultivation world. As long as you enter, you will die. So you must be careful not to approach this place when I am not here, so as not to fall in and not come out. Do you understand?" "Well, I understand, but why haven't I seen any other demon people here? It seems like I haven't seen any servants in your demon palace since I woke up." Not only that, she now carefully looked at the demon palace almost surrounded by a large peach blossom forest, and could not hear any sound except for the wind blowing peach blossoms, which was a bit terrifying. Upon hearing this, Yinxing waved his sleeve and transformed into a pure black flat boat carved with crimson fine lines, standing by the banks of the Forgotten River. "That's because this is a sleeping hall that only I can step into, just a corner of the demon hall. The demon hall, which truly has palace and demon people present, is on the other end of the Forgotten River." After speaking, Yinxing took the lead in stepping onto the flat boat and handed Ning Xiang a thin black powder veil to cover her face. "Remember to wear this thing securely later, so as not to be recognized by some demon tribes who have seen you." Ning Xiang reached out to take it, put on the veil firmly, and Yinxing took her by boat towards the other end of the Forgotten River. The scene at the other end is totally different from Yinxing's peaceful sleeping hall, but it is exactly the same as what Ning Xiang imagined the devil world would be like before. A large amount of black magic energy is scattered around the magnificent but eerie-looking pure black palace, with a claw-shaped statue standing at the top of the magic palace. There are numerous demonic soldiers patrolling in formation, with at least hundreds visible to her naked eye. After seeing Yinxing come, they all stopped performing the etiquette of folding their arms and chest rings to him, respectfully shouting, "Your Highness." Yinxing opened the peach blossom folding fan and let out a lazy waving to let Ning Xiang follow, while continuing to introduce her. "This is the true demon hall. That side is the East Hall, dedicated to discussions. The West Hall is the territory where the elders of the demon clan reside. The South Hall is the residence area of the demon clan guards on duty in the demon hall. As for the North Hall, it is the place where the medicinal herbs of the demon clan are in charge. This is where I will take you now. The soul-burning poison in your body needs to be detoxified once a day, and it needs to be detoxified for 7 days before it can be completely eliminated." Ning Xiang listened to Yinxing's message in her mind and replied, then asked him where the place for dining was. "What, are you hungry?" "No, but today is my birthday. I usually cook a bowl of longevity noodles for myself at this time of the year. It's my right to celebrate my birthday." Yinxing frowned and asked, "If I remember correctly, wasn't it customary for you to celebrate your birthday with your adopted sister Ning Ro, who is only 1 day away from your birthday? Did you not participate in the celebration process yesterday?" Ning Xiang shook her head and said, "No, something happened midway, and originally, my father had agreed with me that this time I would truly have my own birthday, but he still broke his promise. It's ridiculous to say that even though she is Ning Tianhe's biological daughter, she has never had a real birthday since childhood. It was only when she was 13 years old that Ning Ro appeared as an adopted daughter, and every year after that, she had the opportunity to celebrate her birthday with Ning Ro. But that doesn't really belong to her." Yinxing looked at her melancholic expression, her heart tingling as she pursed her lips and returned to her. "When you get to the North Hall later, you should be honest and wait for the materials for detoxification and longevity noodles. I will help you find them later, but don't misunderstand. I will do so just to repay the favor of using you as a hostage to leave the world of truth building. Ning Xiang looked at a demon lord who deliberately pretended to be fierce and asked, so should we separate later? Yinxing was puzzled and said, aren't you talking nonsense? This also saves time. I happen to be dealing with some things. Ning Xiang covered her dark eyes and said, I know. I just wanted to confirm with you that Chuan Yin can still use your magic, right? Seeing him nod, Ning Xiang didn't ask any more questions and followed him into the North Hall filled with medicinal fragrance. The demons in the North Hall, with some dried medicinal herbs on their heads and dressed in robes of dark green and pure black, greeted Yinxing with folded arms and a chest like those demon guards before. After giving a perfunctory glance as usual, Yinxing took Ning Xiang into the inner hall and found an old man with gray hair, who looked as tall as a 7-year-old child, about 60 years old. He pushed Ning Xiang in front of him. Wantai, help her dispel the soul-burning poison. I will come back to pick her up in half an hour. If anyone wants to approach her halfway, remember to protect her. Noah, please take your time. When Yinxing left completely, Wantai led Ning Xiang to the detoxification room and introduced himself, I am the North Hall Chief Medicine Officer. This is the first time I have seen you bring a woman to search for a slave. Ning Xiang nodded and was about to say something when she was interrupted by a slightly low female voice. Oh. She was personally brought by Brother Mo. Yinxing is the best spokesperson for male virtues. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Brother Mo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Brother Mo. Ning Xiang followed the sound and saw the person making the sound wearing a dark wine-red robe, with a bone whip wrapped around her slender waist that seemed to be made of animal bones. At first glance, she thought it was a belt. She looks about the same age as her, around 18, but she is half a head taller than her, with a very handsome face and a bit of a girlish and masculine appearance. At this moment, her bloodshot eyes, symbolizing the identity of the demon race, were fixed on her, giving Ning Xiang a chilling feeling of being targeted by a venomous snake. Wantai saw the incoming person and instinctively stood in front of Ning Xiang to block him, but his height as a 7-year-old child couldn't block much. Yan Hufa, do you have anything important to do? The girl known as Yan Hufa ignored Wantai and approached Ning Xiang, asking her, what's your name? Who are you, Brother Mo? A series of questions rushed towards Ning Xiang, combined with the woman's recent shout of, Brother Mo, making her instantly smell some unusual smell. Does this person in front of me seem to have a special relationship with Yinxing? But she didn't think too long either. She remembered that she would stay in the demon world for the next few days, and it was time to reveal the identity that Yinxing had prepared for her. She used voice-changing techniques to lower her voice and said, Hui Yan Protector, my servant's name is Xiangning. Maid. Are you his maid? Yan Hufa squinted his eyes, and a demonic aura enveloped Ning Xiang's body to test her condition. He found that she had a demonic aura on her body, and her original vigilance was only slightly relieved, but it was only some. Seeing that she still wanted to reach out and touch Ning Xiang's arm, it seemed like she wanted a deep exploration. Wantai took 2 steps forward and helped Ning Xiang stop her. Yan Hufa, don't make things difficult for me. Your Highness instructed me to detoxify Xiangning quickly before leaving. He will be tested half an hour after he returns. If you have any questions, please wait until I finish here. Is that okay with you? Moving out Yinxing seems to be very useful for Yan Hufa. In the end, she temporarily stopped exploring Ning Xiang, but still followed suit step by step. It seems that she won't give up until she asks a question today. Ning Xiang felt very uncomfortable being stared at by Yan Hufa. When receiving the Wantai needle injection for detoxification, in order to divert her attention, she used her brain to communicate with Yinxing and talked about the situation here. Did you run into Siya? Upon hearing Mo Yinxing's unusually affectionate address to this Yan Hufa, Ning Xiang's heart suddenly felt a little stuffy. She let out a and continued, "Who is she? Are you on good terms with her?" "Well, she is one of the few people in this demon world who I trust very much. She has also shown me numerous life-saving kindness. In my eyes, she is no different from my sister." "Sister. I see." The dullness hovering in the girl's heart dissipated like smoke in the wind with the appearance of the word sister. She even unconsciously bent her lips, and a faint light overflowed her abnormal pupils. Yinxing, who was closely monitoring her situation, squinted again, and the inexplicable sense of crisis in her heart gradually intensified. Mo Yinxing went quickly and returned quickly. When he returned, Wantai's injection of Ning Xiang was almost completely over. Upon seeing him return, Ning Xiang stood up and was about to say something when Yinxing, who had stood up before her, interrupted her. "Brother Mo, didn't you never take maids before? Why did you suddenly have the interest to take one today? I haven't received any news." Mo Yinxing originally wanted to ask Ning Xiang how she felt, but now she was blocked by Yinxing, so she had to deal with her first. "I suddenly felt that someone needed to help me with something in the palace, so I wanted to take one and give it a try." "Why did you come over too? Is there something injured on your body?" "Well, when I went to the demon forest to hunt monsters and collect magic stones, I injured my right arm. I came here to get the magic potion, it hurts so much." "How could you be so careless? Let me take a look." Ning Xiang stood behind Yinxing, watching the scene where Mo Yinxing was very concerned about the woman next to her. Although she knew that he only treated Yinxing as a sister, the feeling of suffocation in her chest that had only dissipated for a short time gathered again, forcing her to recognize and not want to see them again. After Mo Yinxing checked Yinxing's injury and confirmed that it was not too serious, he urgently looked at the position where Ning Xiang was standing and asked Yinxing to go back to recuperate as soon as possible. Yinxing thought this was a sign of Mo Yinxing's concern for her, and glanced at the maid who had been neglected by Mo Yinxing. She was in such a good mood that she lifted her step and left. Until she was completely invisible, Mo Yinxing nervously looked at Ning Xiang and asked, "Did Yinxing come into contact with her body?" "No." Ning Xiang's voice was much colder than before, but a rough and nervous demon lord did not notice. After hearing her say no, she asked Wantai how the detoxification process was going. Wantai noticed Ning Xiang's emotional changes and answered Mo Yinxing's question. Later, citing the need to bring some medicine back to Ning Xiang, he took Mo Yinxing to the pharmacy. When Wantai entered the pharmacy, he did not treat Mo Yinxing as he did when he was outside just now. He was no longer the respectful expression that his subordinates should have towards the demon lord. Instead, he touched the long beard on his chin and asked him with an elder's demeanor. "That maid's identity should not be simple, right? When I was acupuncture and moxibustion her, I noticed the monk's breath on her. Who is she?" Mo Yinxing did not deny it, but did not reveal Ning Xiang's identity. He only said that he was an important person to him. Very important. Wantai glanced at Mo Yinxing's serious expression and reminded him meaningfully as he packaged the selected magic potion and handed it to him. "Since it's very important, then you need to closely monitor this person's mood." Mo Yinxing was a bit confused, but Wantai didn't want to say much anymore, so he had to take Ning Xiang out of the North Hall and board a small boat on the Forgotten River to take her back to the Demon Hall. The two of them boarded the small boat, one in front and one behind. Not long after, they saw Yinxing, who was supposed to leave early, slowly emerge from the darkness. A girl with a masculine face was so gloomy that she couldn't bear it. Her hanging hands clenched like fists, making a creaking sound. Xiangning. All of this, Mo Yinxing was completely unaware. When he handed the medicine package in his hand to Ning Xiang, he realized that she had hardly spoken on the way back. But after thinking about it, when he went to fight and spar with her in the past, she basically spoke very little, so she didn't think much. She took out a pink and white long flowing Su sword spike from the Lord of the Rings and handed it to Ning Xiang. Well, when buying longevity noodles, the vendor said that he bought too many sword tassels and gave them to me. I don't need a sword. It's a waste to hold this thing, so I'll give it to you. Ning Xiang looked at the top concentric knot that had turned into a dead knot, completely unable to reach the sales level of the strange ugly sword spike, and her expression was slightly stunned. It's not that she was stunned by the ugliness, but rather this thing. How could she become more familiar as she looked at it? Yinxing. It's just my younger sister. Even my younger brother is fine. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Real Longevity Noodles. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Asking the Spring of Hearts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Asking the Spring of Hearts. The fact that she must get up and eat a green fruit in the middle of the night every day is a small quirk of her own. And this quirk was possessed by her before her cultivation was as powerful as it is now. At that time, Ning Xiang, in order to help her improve her cultivation as soon as possible, started her cultivation when she was only 7 years old. He said that by saving time for meals earlier, she could increase her time for cultivation. Ordinary cultivators usually start to open their valleys after the age of 12. At that time, she was only 7 years old and just a child. How can one truly resist the desire for food and drink? But in order to meet Ning Xiang's expectations early on, she still forced herself to endure countless days and nights of being hungry to the point of dizziness in both eyes and stomach pain. It was still when she was 9 years old that everything changed when she met the little demon. He told her that Pigu just didn't need to eat and eating fruit shouldn't be a problem, so he somehow brought a bunch of green fruits over from somewhere. And in order to save time for cultivation, she usually only sleeps until midnight and wakes up to practice, so this green fruit is eaten in the middle of the night every day. Later on, she had completely succeeded in breaking through the valley and became the darling of heaven in the eyes of everyone. She didn't need to continue to work so hard, but the habits she developed were difficult to change and became a strange habit for her. But she remembered clearly that besides the little demon, even Ning Xiang and she had never told him about this strange habit. Yinxing, how did he know? The girl looked at the green fruit in her hand, illuminated by the moonlight, with a stomach full of doubts. In the end, she didn't choose to go find him now and ate it clean in a small bite. The next day at dawn, Ning Xiang followed Yinxing on a small boat to the Forgotten River. As they approached the location of the Wenxin Spring, they asked about Qinghua. How did you know that I have a habit of eating this thing in the middle of the night? Since Yinxing had already prepared for Ning Xiang, of course he had already found a reason for himself in advance. He first pretended to be surprised and said that she had such a strange habit, and then continued. Of course, I don't know you have this strange habit. The green fruits are just casually placed. Although you and I were sworn enemies before, the current situation requires us to temporarily cease hostilities. You come from outside to me, so it's a guest. Is it strange to prepare some fruits for you? Ning Xiang was half believing and half doubting, always feeling that it was too clever. He didn't prepare so many fruits, how could he just prepare apples or green fruits? But he really shouldn't have had any chance to learn about her quirk, so she didn't think much about it. On the way to Wenxin Spring, after Yinxing's introduction, Ning Xiang roughly understood that the so-called demon realm was a large experienced secret realm, similar to the 10-kill realm she had been experiencing before. The only difference is that there is a demon guardian guarding every place in this secret realm, and there is also a place used to build a demon palace, as well as a residence for the people of the demon realm. Coincidentally, the guardian law of Wenxin Spring was Yinxing, whom she had only seen yesterday. Seeing that there was still some distance to reach the entrance of Wenxin Spring, Yinxing spoke up and introduced this place to Ning Xiang. The place of Wenxin Spring is named after it, and the most famous thing is this Wenxin Spring. As long as you stand in front of it and silently contemplate your doubts, you can see the answer you want in the well water. However, this thing is very rare, and it only produces a little in a year. It is usually used to prevent the cultivation of demons for those of the demon clan. Compared to people in the cultivation world, although the cultivation speed of the demon clan is twice that of the latter, they are easily controlled by the demonic energy and become completely irrational. The reason behind this is that the demon clan has many negative personalities inherent in their bloodline. Evil, cunning, ruthless, and lustful. If any one of them is not well controlled, it is easy to breed inner demons. Ning Xiang is also aware of this. After listening to Mo Yinxing's introduction and nodding, she asked him, "Can cultivators use this thing?" Mo Yinxing nodded and said, "It can be used." This thing was originally owned by the demon tribe, and there are also many treasures of the demon tribe in your cultivation world. Those can all be used, and this one must also be possible. Upon hearing him mention the demon race, for some reason, the figure of that little demon suddenly appeared in Ning Xiang's mind. It had been more than 6 years since we last parted ways, and she didn't know how he was now. In thought, a vortex light door overflowing with deep blue light appeared in front of her. Mo Yinxing reminded her that it was time to go somewhere and asked her to hold on to the edge of the small boat, as it might be more wobbly when entering. After Xiaozhou disappeared completely into the vortex light door, Ning Xiang realized that Mo Yinxing was completely conservative, not just swaying. If it weren't for her witnessing many strong winds and waves, and seeing such a huge vortex that seemed to be at the center of a sea storm for the first time, she might have been frightened and softened. The strong turbulence accompanied by the splashing of river water lasted for almost half a cup of tea before the boat crossed the vortex and officially arrived at the Wenqin Spring. As the dense fog gradually cleared away, a small town-like place came into view, but the overall decoration color of the town was black and blue, which looked very dull. Mo Yinxing took her ashore and released a black butterfly with dark blue light powder on its wings in his right hand. Watching it fly further away, he opened his folding fan and cast a technique of concealing his true face at him and her. "Let's go to the spring with the spring of questioning." Kuan Yin is located at the northernmost point of Wenqin town. To enter, one usually needs to obtain a permission wooden plaque from Yen Xie, the protector. However, Mo Yinxing is a demon lord, and the rules are only for the weak, so he naturally does not need to follow them. So when Yen Xie noticed that someone had entered the spring without permission, she instantly guessed who would have gone. She let go of what she was doing, her body turned into black smoke and disappeared, and went to find Mo Yinxing. Wenqin Kuan Yen. The so-called spring eye, in Ning Xiang's view, is just a very ordinary well, containing a pool of water overflowing with amber green. Ning Xiang looked at it with a slight daze and said, "This is the Wenqin Spring. Why is it like well water?" "Well, this thing was handled by those old guys at the time. They were all cultural deserts and didn't even know the difference between spring water and well water, so they just made a well and put the thing inside." At this point, Mo Yinxing's face showed a disdainful expression, as if the people he was referring to were not his subordinates. Cultural desert. What does this word mean? The person in front of her has always liked to say some strange words, and she was not interested in understanding the meanings of those words before, so she basically never asked. But now it's different. Mo Yinxing was a bit surprised when Ning Xianghui suddenly asked about this matter. After being stunned for a moment, she roughly explained, "It just means that she has no education and doesn't read well." Ning Xiang nodded and walked forward. Following what Mo Yinxing had told her before, she bit her index finger and dripped a drop of blood into it, silently reciting her doubts in her heart. Not long after, a line of light green font gushed out of Quan's eyes, allowing Ning Xiang to see it clearly. Ning Xiang. How did he know? Mo Yinxing. Humph, guess what? End of this chapter.